Hello, I'm Robin Vincent and welcome to Molten Modular Music Technology. This is sort of an additional video to the one I did the other day talking about Bitwig over there, the Hermod and the Modular, because I need to take this forward now, because one of the things that we discover in Eurorack, or certainly in my Eurorack experience, is that this is temporary. Very, very temporary. If I want to do something else, if I want to make some different music or have a look at something different, I have to destroy what I have created. And I have left this sort of connected and turned on over the weekend because I don't want to lose it, because this is the patch that I was working on that's going to go alongside the vocals I had recorded in Bitwig. If you're not following me, you need to watch the earlier video. But it doesn't matter, because what this video is going to be about is the process in how I take the stuff from the modular and then use it, record it, mix it into stuff so that I can then play with this again in a different way. So this is a bit like going back to the idea of how do you write music on Eurorack. So I wanted to share my process in that, because that's exactly what I'm going to do. I'm going to record all of this into the Surface Pro over there. I'm then going to mix it together, probably not on the Surface, probably on my desktop in a different DAW, just for fun, because I do. And I thought you people out there in Videoland might find that interesting or entertaining or something. I don't know, I'm just sharing my journey, man. What else am I supposed to do? So in this addendum to my earlier video, I'm going to show you how I'm going to take the sound out of here, how I'm going to record it onto my Surface, how then I'm going to mix it all together in a wonderful way, and then, I don't know, do you want to see me encode an MP3? I don't think that's very exciting. But we'll go up to that point, perhaps. Or we'll just, I'll take video of the bits that I do as I do them, just so that you can see the process. Because, who knows, it might be interesting. So how am I going to do all this? Well, what I'm going to do is stream audio out of here, through an ADAT box, through my audio fuse, into Bitwig. Multi-track recording of audio. Just like I did in the video when I was showing you how I was making a track on Eurorack. It's the same deal. I'm just going to go through that again because it's interesting. And some people have asked about it previously, so maybe I didn't go into quite enough detail. So we're just going to follow that process through. And this is what we have. So all of that, minus the vocals of course, just the Eurorack stuff, I'm going to stream into Bitwig and record it as audio tracks. That's the plan. And ultimately, I'm not sure that this is going to turn into a modular track. I think I'm going to be blending a bit of modular with a bit of the stuff I've already done in the DAW. Because why not? Why not use everything? Everything at my disposal. That's the plan. So at the moment, everything is coming through the Hermod into the modular and controlling it, playing it, doing all sorts of things. I've got all sorts of modulation going on, I've got all sorts of effects going on. What I want to achieve when I'm recording it as multi-track is that I want to isolate those individual tracks. I want to isolate the arpeggiated bit, the bass line bit, the chordy, plucky bit, and record them all individually as tracks within Bitwig on the Surface Pro. Because things like delay and other effects, unless there's something specific about it which is interesting in of itself. So for instance, I might leave the Eventide in, I might leave the Magneto in, I don't know. I mean, once I've isolated each channel, I can then listen to it separately and make decisions on that. Because otherwise, things like adding reverb, things like adding a simple delay and bits and pieces can be done in the box, can be done in the DAW. I've got no problem with that occurring at that time. So those of you who are not familiar with my setup so far, I'm going to grab this. So I'll take the sound out of here, which I'll show you in a minute, and that is then going to go down into this, which is my Behringer Ultra Gain Digital ADAT converter. Got individual outputs on here, 8 individual outputs into which the Eurorack will go, and I can adjust a level. That will then route via an optical ADAT cable out of the back, all the way along here, along the back, into the audio fuse here. I haven't plugged it in yet. Here it is, there it is. See the red on that? Yes, see, that's the digital audio coming out of there. That's going to go into the audio fuse. That will then appear as 8 channels of audio going into Bitwig. I will then record that as a multitrack, and then I'll be free to do with that whatever I choose, and I can pull the whole Eurorack apart and do something else with it. Always remembering that Eurorack, for me in my environment, what I'm doing here is a one-shot deal. I set it up, I do it, I make the music, I record it, and then it's gone. There's no presets, there's no going back, there's no undo, there's no saving it as different versions like it was a project on a DAW. It is here at the moment making sound, and I'm going to take that sound, stick it on the computer, mix it, and it's done. And that is the beauty. That is why I love this so much. I've been working on that blinking track for years. It's been knocking around forever. As soon as I involve Eurorack in it, you just have to get it done. Because if I don't get it done, it's gone and I'll never get it done. So the whole using this sort of temporary, transient, evolving and continuously changing format, this unsavable format, means that I am pushed into making music of the moment, or maybe over a weekend or a couple of days, but then having to finish it, record it, move on. That is awesome. I've never been able to do that. I always get stuck in stupid loops, and I may yet, because I'm still allowing the computer into this equation, because I'm going to take it and mix it on computer later, and that might delay me for another 5 years trying to get this track finished. But hopefully not, because hopefully I'm going to start learning from this ethos, learning from this experience that Eurorack and modular and analog is all temporary, and take that with me so that I can mix it quickly and just get it done. That's beautiful, brilliant. I love that whole thing, at the same time as it's just kind of annoying, because I'd like to go away and do something else and come back and do this, but I can't. I have to finish it. I have to complete what I was doing, or just not do it. And that's quite a hard taskmaster, at the same time as it being awesome and lovely. Yeah, do you see how it's good and bad, pros and cons, swings and roundabouts? So yes, cats and dogs. So yeah, I'm going to wire this all in, and then I'll show you how that works and then record it into the Surface. So now I've wired the Eurorack through the converter. Let me show you what I mean. So I have the 8 main sound sources that I'm using spilling off the desk into individual channels here on the ultra gain. Those then all travel down the light pipe into the back of the audio fuse, and I have them coming in as channels into the Surface Pro over here, ready to go into Bitwig. So let me show you what we have on each channel. If I solo this one and then bring it up. So that's the bass on channel 1. Channel 2 is the STO arpeggiator. Channel 3, I've got the pluck, the 2 HP pluck coming through. On channels 4 and 5, I've got the graphic VCO. I've changed that a little bit. I've now got the main output going through the filter, and I've got the sub output just creating a sine wave underneath, which seem to work better now that I've worked on it a little bit. Then on 6, I've got the Bassimilus. On 7, the kick drum. And on 8, the hi-hat. So now I've got all of those ready to record. I'm going to listen to them sort of individually on headphones for a little bit, just to make sure I've got the levels right, make sure there's no weird distortion or funniness going on, and then I'll record it directly into Bitwig. I'm all wired in. I'm ready to hit record in Bitwig. Let me show you. I've got 8 tracks ready with monitoring on. Not that it matters whether we listen to it or not, because I'm not actually going to do anything on the Eurorack. I'm not going to perform or twiddle any knobs in particular. I just want to capture the performance as it is without sort of stuffing it up, and I'm just going to be using that and blending that in with what I've already got. So that's the plan. Let's go back to the start. Hit record, and hopefully the performance will be captured. So there you go, recorded 8 tracks into Bitwig. Now I seem to remember that there was an alternative version of the pluck that I'd done that was a bit of an arpeggiator. Now I wonder if I can find that. I might want to run that as well. Oh, so there it is. I have a chord, if you like, coming from the Bitwig via MIDI going into the Hermod. The Hermod is applying an arpeggiator to that. That is coming out of here and playing the pluck. That's the process, that's what's going on. Chords from my DAW, Hermod is arpeggiating it, playing a bit of modular going on. That's then going through the magneto here. Which seems to be creating something nice. I'm not entirely sure what I'm doing with that yet. But there's a little bit of a bump in it, a little bit of a glitch, and I wonder whether that's to do with the MIDI chords that I've got going in Bitwig, that they're not actually precisely set. So I'm just going to go back in and edit that so that it's nice and smooth, or maybe even just make it one long line. Maybe that's better than having it played and then played and then played. I don't know, but I quite like to capture that as well, so I'm going to capture that alongside and take it with me when I do the other mixing. And yes, that's much better. So I don't know if you can hear that coming through. I did have to do a little bit of adjustment in the old MIDI side of things because I had sort of double chords pressed down, dum, 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 dum. And so I've now just smoothed that out into single chords. I've now got a much better arpeggiator going through, which is not going to screw up quite so much. If I go back to my arrangement, I should, with a bit of luck, be able to set that recording, bring this back over here, hit record. Well, with a little bit of luck, that will stay roughly to what I want, and there'll be something in there that I can take and use somewhere else in the piece, perhaps. So that, as far as I'm concerned, is my modular captured. I've taken the output, I've massaged it into things, I've stuffed it into the surface. It now appears as a bunch of tracks on the computer, and that is it. That has to be it. I can't keep fiddling and faffing around because I want to use this for something else. I've got another track that I want to write and other things that I want to do and things I want to review and stuff and more videos to make. So I can't keep this as it is. So I seem to be going over this a lot. I seem to be repeating myself. But in some ways that's okay. So I'm just trying to reinforce this idea that once it's done, it's recorded, you move on. Because it may not be a revelation for you, but for me, that's an enormous thing. It's like a huge hurdle to get over, a huge thought process to get myself around that is now done and that's in there, and now I can mix that and I've got a finished track. That's super. So what am I going to do now? Well, now I'm going to have to work on that a little bit because I have an arrangement in there and I actually want to move this into StudioOne. I don't want to mix it in Bitwig as such, because I need to work on StudioOne at the moment because I'm writing a review of it, and so it's a good opportunity to take some music and put it into there and mess that about a little bit. So I'm going to formalize that by mixing down the tracks, which are arranged tracks, just to get just to capture the arrangement into single blocks of audio. I'm then going to dump all that into StudioOne over there and do a bit of mixing. So I'm going to do that. That's very boring to watch. I'm not going to make you do that. And I'll see you on the other side. So I dumped it all into StudioOne version 4, and well, it's a bit of a disaster, really. Let me show you. So I've got it all here as tracks imported nicely. I've already done a little bit of editing in order to tidy it up a little bit and to get rid of some really crappy stuff. And as an original project,
maker of the universe, how awesome is your name? My anxiousness, my fear and doubt, I try to leave the...
it's sounding pretty nice, pretty sweet, as I remember it being when I first put it together, and I've massaged it a little bit more, and it's a pretty great track all by itself. Now, let's bring in some of the modular elements.
My anxiousness, my fear and doubt, I try to leave behind. But you will take me as I am, scared and poor and
I mean, the arpeggiators and the pluck and stuff, it's not too bad. It could fit in. The only question really is whether it brings anything to the mix at all, and I'm not really convinced that it does. This is not to say that it wasn't an interesting exercise to do, and creativity and music making is all about stepping out and taking those risks and trying stuff out and seeing whether that's going to fit in. And I certainly accomplished that. But then when you look at things like the Simulus,
show me how to forgive those who constantly deal me.
and it's not that it doesn't work, it's just that I'm not sure that it really enhances the mix particularly, but maybe I just need to play with it more. But then maybe the point is that it either works or it doesn't, and maybe you need to move on rather than fussing and fiddling with it. So I think I've got a good track to mix down, and I would have loved there to be some elements within the Eurorack that really lifted it or brought it up or did something strange and interesting. I mean, actually in the comments to my last video, someone mentioned how what I probably need to do is get Hannah back, get the vocalist back in, to sing along to the feel of the Eurorack, because she's singing along to the feel of those kind of break beats that are going on, and that has a certain lilt to it, has a certain swing to it, and so that's never really gonna sit right, perhaps. I mean, there's clever things I could do. I could extract a groove from those loops and apply that to the Simulus and things like that, but I think that's probably just going a little bit too far. I think perhaps in this particular experiment of trying to add Eurorack into an existing sort of synthesized track is in some ways doing both formats a disservice, and maybe it's better to start on modular and to use the feel of that, because it has a uniqueness to it. It has its own vibe, if you like, and to use that as the basis of something and then perhaps pad it out with additional stuff in a door, as opposed to trying to bolt in modular, which is what I kind of feel like I'm doing at the moment. But as I said at the beginning of the original video, that this is kind of one of the last pieces of music I've written purely in the DAW, and maybe that's where I need to leave it. Maybe that should be where it should stay. And I can underline that, I can finish it off, I can release that track along with a load of other music I've been putting together, and then move on more assuredly, more deliberately and intentionally into the modular music making side of things. Maybe that's the lesson I'm learning here, is that you don't need to blend these two things. You shouldn't have to try so hard perhaps to incorporate Eurorack into your music making when actually it's going to start standing on its own 2 feet as its own thing. Or maybe on the other hand, it highlights actually how difficult it is to bring a new instrument into an existing setup. When we're so used to things like swing and quantization and loops and bits and pieces that we have on the door, how difficult is that to incorporate with something which is a bit more robotic, a bit more structured? Modular can be very structured. I mean, I have swing on the Vermona random rhythm, and I've used that quite a bit, and that's really nice. But generally, as a rule, Eurorack has this quite rigid feel to it. Perhaps. Or does it? Maybe yours doesn't. Maybe mine is, and maybe it shouldn't. I don't know. I don't know. But I think it's interesting purely because of the amount of tools that we have in a DAW to change timings, to shift, to have loops that match up with each other, and have everything working in this amazing computerized synergy. And you don't get that with Eurorack because it has to be worked for. It has to be massaged out of it. You have to interpret and play and adjust. It's much more manual. And that's interesting. Does it mean that it's more hard work? Perhaps. Does it mean that you get greater rewards? Not necessarily. Because within a DAW, the rewards are huge because you can do so much automatically without really having to worry about it. And on Eurorack, you have a lot more to worry about. You know, whether it's timing, whether it's tuning, whether it's modulation, whether it's going in and out of the range of things, it's whether you're getting bum notes coming out or two things just not quite meshing together, or the looping of something not quite working. These are all things that we've taken for granted for so long in a DAW that when it comes to making music with modular, these things start to come up, and you begin to get a little glimpse as to why modular was left behind, why analog synthesis was kind of rejected as soon as digital synthesis came along, because it suddenly made the world so much easier. And I think as people new to modular, as people coming into this idea of synthesis and this way of working, we are rediscovering the issues and the problems. And we have a choice, I suppose, as to say, oh, sod it, let's just go back to virtual instruments and do it properly. Or to work with it and to work within it and to use that feel, that analogness, that roughness perhaps, as part of what we are doing and part of the music that we are trying to generate. Something which has something which kind of comes from the soul of electronic music. I mean, does that make sense? Is it the imperfections in Eurorack which gives it some kind of humanity? Or is it just purely that it's a bit crap and really we should be packing in this nonsense and doing it on the computer where we can actually get it right? It's interesting, isn't it? It's very interesting. Well, anyway, so what I hope to be producing now from this point is to base everything within the Eurorack. So to have new tracks, new music, new vocals being applied to music that's been made in Eurorack. That's my ultimate aim. I mean, I've been talking to Hannah about this quite a bit because we've performed together for probably a decade off and on, writing together, recording together, performing together, every now and again, just sporadically. And it's always a wonderful experience. She has such a fantastic voice and a creative interpretation of things. And what I'm hoping for in moving forward is to produce a live situation, a live rig, which is all about improvising a performance on Eurorack coupled with her vocals singing along to that. It seems somehow impossible because of the inability to replicate anything on the Eurorack, at least in my system at the moment, but it would certainly be interesting if we could get to the point where she's able to sing sort of improvised alongside the Eurorack, So we have some kind of grounding in something which is the same, and we have lyrics perhaps and words that have some kind of tune and feel, which can then be performed alongside a performing Eurorack. This sounds really, really scary and very, very exciting all at the same time. I don't know if any of it's possible. I don't know if we're ever going to find the time to make that happen, but it's an interesting idea, an interesting concept, and that is where my music making is going to be heading, I think, going forward. So there you are. There's just a handful of thoughts about that sort of thing, and also the demonstration that it doesn't always have to work. I don't think it works. I think I'm going to stick with my original intention for this track and move on to something else. So that'll do. And in the meantime, go and make some tunes. Maybe there is something in there. I don't know, maybe. That pluck arpeggiator, that's not really working, I don't think. So, you know, scrub that bit. I don't know. So I wasn't intending to do any more on this, but I don't know, listening to it again, maybe it does have something. Maybe it does have something. Oh, will music ever be finished? Will anyone ever actually truly finish a track, or will it always be open to more manipulation and change and possibilities? I don't know. I mean, I've already sent you off to go and make more tunes, so this seems to be like, what am I talking about? It doesn't really matter. I think all my thoughts from earlier are true and hold sway, and I think I could probably talk myself into doing something more interesting with this, but I don't want to go back to the Eurorack and start re-recording stuff again, because I just end up in this endless loop. I've done some stuff. I took some chances. The track's all right by itself. Should I add more in? Who knows? I don't know. I'm just going to play with it now a bit more, but I probably need to get on with other things. So thank you, and I'll do the fade out bit now. Okay, here we go for the fade out. Interesting, actually. Am I still doing this? It's interesting, actually, how the kick and the dissimilar really do fill something out in the bottom. So does the bass. When I take them out is when you notice it. There's stuff in here.
Everything I say and hear, it forms your destiny. You know why the life is present for all eternity.
So yeah, let's reverse everything that I said before and say, actually, no, this is flipping excellent, and you should always be using Eurorack to pack it in to something else because it's always going to improve upon what you already have. Yeah, let's go with that or something. Anyway, back to the fade out. I was fading out. That's it. We're done now. Okay, good. I think.